In the heart of every major city on Earth, there is a building with no windows. Inside, men gather in darkness. They speak in code. They swear oaths of secrecy. They wear symbols older than empires. Some call them a Brotherhood of Enlightenment. Others call them the architects of a new world order. They've been accused of controlling governments, orchestrating revolutions, and hiding ancient knowledge that could change everything we think we know about human history. Their symbols are carved into your money, built into your cities, hidden in plain sight. George Washington was one. Benjamin Franklin, Mozart, Winston Churchill, Simon Bolivar, astronauts, Supreme Court justices, kings. Millions of men across 3 centuries have taken the oath. But what are they really hiding? Tonight, we enter the lodge. We decode the symbols. We separate the myths from the truth. And we answer the question that has haunted the world for 300 years. Who are the Freemasons? Our story begins not in shadow, but in stone. The year is 1277. England, France, and Scotland is the age of cathedrals. For centuries, Europe's greatest structures were rising toward heaven, and the men who built them were not ordinary workers. They were master craftsmen, architects, geometers, men who understood mathematics that most could not comprehend. These were the operative Masons, and they guarded their knowledge jealously. To build a cathedral that wouldn't collapse, it required secrets passed from master to apprentice. Techniques of weight distribution, the mathematics of the arch, the mystery of the flying buttress. This knowledge was power, and power required protection. So the stonemasons formed guilds, exclusive brotherhoods with their own laws, their own ceremonies, their own codes. A mason from Scotland could travel to France and prove his rank through secret signs, a handshake, a word, a gesture. These were the first Masonic secrets. Not mystical, not occult, practical and necessary. But then something changed. By the early 1700s, the age of cathedral building had passed. The operative Masons, the actual stoneworkers, were disappearing, but their lodges remained. And into these lodges came a new kind of member: philosophers, scientists, merchants, aristocrats, men who had never lifted a chisel in their lives. They called themselves speculative Masons, men interested not in building physical structures, but in building themselves, their character, their minds, their souls. They took the old stonemason symbols, the square, the compass, the level, and transformed them into moral lessons. The square became righteousness. The compass became boundaries of good conduct. The level became equality among brothers. On June 24, 1717, 4 London lodges gathered at the Goose and Gridiron Tavern. And there, they formed the first Grand Lodge, the birth of modern Freemasonry. But even then, the myths were already taking root, because the Freemasons themselves claimed their origins went far deeper than medieval guilds. Some said their lineage stretched back to the Knights Templar, warrior monks who had uncovered secret treasures beneath Solomon's temple. The Templars were destroyed in 1307, burned at the stake by a jealous king and a complicit pope. But legends whispered that survivors fled to Scotland, carrying ancient knowledge they would preserve in secret lodges, waiting for the right time to emerge. The evidence? Intriguing, but inconclusive. Masonic rituals mention Solomon's temple. So did the Templars. Both groups used similar symbols. Both valued secrecy. But historians have found no direct link, no documented connection. The Templar legend appears to be just that, just a legend, grafted onto Masonic history in the 1700s to give a new organization ancient prestige. But the Templars weren't the only ancient connection the Masons claimed. Some Masonic texts suggested their knowledge came from ancient Egypt, from the mystery schools of Isis and Osiris, from the builders of the pyramids themselves. After all, Wasn't the all-seeing eye one of Masonry's most famous symbols derived from the Eye of Horus? The answer is complicated. The 18th century was obsessed with Egypt. When Napoleon invaded in 1798, he brought scientists who documented everything. Suddenly, Egyptian symbolism was everywhere in European culture. Fashionable, exotic, mysterious. Did Freemasons borrow Egyptian imagery because of ancient connections? Or because it was trendy? The truth is likely the latter, but the symbol stuck. And with it, the aura of ancient wisdom. So where does that leave us? The actual, documented origin of Freemasonry is clear. Medieval stonemason guilds evolving into philosophical societies in the 1600s and 1700s. But the Masons themselves preferred a more romantic origin story, one connecting them to Templars, to Egypt, to Solomon, to the very foundations of civilization. Why? Because mystery has power, and these men were about to use that power to change the world. Within 20 years of that meeting in London, Freemasonry had spread like wildfire. But this wasn't just a gentleman's club. This was something revolutionary. Because inside the lodges, something radical was happening. A duke could sit next to a merchant. A Catholic could debate with a Protestant. A scientist could collaborate with a poet. In an age of rigid hierarchy, of kings and serfs, of nobles and commoners, the lodge was a space where birth didn't matter. Only merit, only character. This was the Enlightenment taking physical form. And the men attracted to this philosophy? They weren't ordinary. Voltaire, who challenged the church and championed reason. Benjamin Franklin, inventor, revolutionary, diplomat. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, whose opera The Magic Flute was filled with Masonic symbolism. George Washington, who laid the cornerstone of the U.S. Capitol in full Masonic regalia. Simon Bolivar, who liberated South America from Spanish rule. Winston Churchill, Theodore Roosevelt, Harry Truman, Henry Ford, Mark Twain, Oscar Wilde. These weren't fringe figures. These were the men shaping history, and they all shared one common bond, the square and compass. But it was in America where Masonic influence became impossible to ignore. Of the 56 men who signed the Declaration of Independence, at least 9 were confirmed Freemasons, possibly more. Of the 39 who signed the Constitution, 13 were Masons. George Washington, the first president, Mason. Benjamin Franklin, the face of the Revolution, Mason. John Hancock, whose signature is literally synonymous with signing, Mason. Paul Revere, the Midnight Rider, Mason. The American Revolution was not a Masonic plot, but Masonic ideals like liberty, equality, fraternity, reason over tyranny were woven into its very fabric. And when the war was won, when the new nation was being built, Masonic symbols were everywhere. The Capitol building cornerstone was laid in a Masonic ceremony. The same applies to the Washington Monument. The $1 bill was designed by Masons, covered in Masonic imagery. The very layout of Washington, D.C.? Some claim it contains Masonic symbols visible only from above. Streets forming pentagrams. Buildings aligned with solstices. Sacred geometry embedded in the capital of the most powerful nation on earth. Conspiracy? Or simply the aesthetic preferences of the era's architects, many of whom happened to be Masons? But America wasn't the only revolution touched by Masonic hands. The French Revolution, the uprising that overthrew the monarchy and sent shockwaves through Europe, was deeply connected to Freemasonry. The Marquis de Lafayette, key revolutionary figure and liaison between France and America, was a Mason. Many of the revolution's intellectual architects met in Masonic lodges, where ideas of liberty and equality were openly discussed. The revolution's famous motto, liberty, equality, fraternity. Fraternity, brotherhood, the core Masonic value. But here's where it gets complicated. Because while Freemasonry inspired revolutionary ideals, the actual French Revolution became something the Masons never intended. The terror, the mass executions, the descent into chaos. This wasn't Masonic philosophy. This was its perversion. And in the aftermath, the Masons faced a problem that would haunt them for centuries. When revolution succeeded, Masons took pride in their influence. But when revolutions failed or turned bloody, when change brought chaos instead of order, suddenly Freemasons were accused of being puppet masters, secret manipulators, agents of destruction. The Catholic Church officially condemned Freemasonry in 1738, calling it a threat to Christian society. Monarchies saw it as a breeding ground for rebellion. Conspiracy theorists saw it as proof of a shadow government. And the Masons? They retreated deeper into secrecy, which, of course, only made people more suspicious. By the mid-1800s, Freemasonry had spread to every continent. In Latin America, liberators like Simon Bolivar and José de San Martin used Masonic networks to coordinate independence movements. In India, British colonial administrators and local elites met in lodges, creating complicated relationships between oppressor and oppressed. In Africa, in Asia, in the Pacific Islands, wherever Western influence reached, Masonic lodges followed. But with this expansion came fragmentation. Different Grand Lodges emerged with different rules, different rituals, different degrees of secrecy. Scottish Rite, York Rite, French Rite, dozens of branches, each claiming authentic lineage. And with fragmentation came vulnerability. Because in the 20th century, the world would go to war, and Freemasonry would face its greatest test. Adolf Hitler called Freemasonry a Jewish conspiracy and banned all lodges in Germany. Thousands of Freemasons were arrested. Many were sent to concentration camps, forced to wear the forget-me-not flower as a badge of identification. In Spain, Franco's regime did the same. In Italy, Mussolini suppressed the lodges. Across totalitarian Europe, Freemasonry was seen as a threat because its very existence promoted free thought, equality, and brotherhood across borders. And that was unacceptable to tyrants. When World War II ended, Freemasonry rebuilt. But the world had changed. The age of empires was over. The age of revolution had passed. Democracy, for all its flaws, was spreading. And suddenly, Freemasonry's revolutionary purpose seemed obsolete. The Brotherhood that had helped overthrow kings now met in suburban buildings, hosting pancake breakfasts and charity drives. But their symbols remained, their secrets remained, and the questions never stopped. What are they really hiding? To answer that, we need to decode the symbols. In a room without windows, a man stands blindfolded. He has removed all medals, his watch, his rings, his coins. He wears simple clothes. One leg of his trousers is rolled up. One arm is bare. He is about to become a Freemason. What happens next is known only to those who have taken the oath. But elements have been documented, written about, even exposed by former members. The candidate is led into the lodge room. He cannot see, but he can hear the shuffle of feet, the murmur of voices, the weight of judgment in the air. He is asked questions. He gives answers. He swears an oath to keep the secrets, to support his brothers, to seek truth and enlightenment. And then the blindfold is removed, and he sees the symbols. The most recognizable symbol in Freemasonry. Two tools intersecting. Simple, ancient, and powerful. The square, a tool for measuring right angles, for ensuring corners are true, represents morality, living righteously, being on the square. The compass, used to draw perfect circles, to set boundaries, represents restraint, keeping your passions and desires within proper bounds. Together, they symbolize the balance between virtue and passion. between doing right and controlling oneself. But conspiracy theorists see something else. They claim the symbol represents tools of control. The square is rigid order. The compass is manipulation, drawing boundaries around human freedom. Some say the angles form hidden letters or number secret codes embedded in plain sight. The truth? The symbol means what the Masons say it means. But symbols are powerful precisely because people can project their own meanings onto them. And the Masons knew this, so they designed their symbols to operate on multiple levels. At the center of the square and compass, in many lodges, sits a single letter, G. Ask a Freemason what it means, and you'll get an answer. Geometry. The sacred science that underlies all creation, from the spiral of a galaxy to the structure of a snowflake. Or God, the grand architect of the universe. The divine force that Masons acknowledge without specifying any particular religion. But there are other interpretations. Some claim the G stands for Gnosis secret knowledge, hidden wisdom that only the initiated can access. Others say it's generative principle, the creative force, the life energy that flows through all things. The letter appears throughout Masonic buildings, always prominent, always central. A reminder of something beyond the physical, beyond the mundane. But perhaps the most controversial symbol isn't on the lodge floor at all. The Eye of Providence, the all-seeing eye, an eye within a triangle surrounded by radiating light. To Freemasons, it represents the watchful eye of the divine, the idea that a higher power observes all, judges all, knows all. A reminder to act morally even when no one is watching, because someone is always watching. But this symbol has become so associated with conspiracy theories that it's almost impossible to separate the two, because this symbol appears on the US dollar bill. And when people see it, they don't think divine providence. They think Illuminati. It was a real secret society founded in Bavaria in 1776, but suppressed and disbanded within 15 years. But the myth survived. The idea that a secret group controls world events, pulling strings from the shadows. And because the founder had connections to Freemasonry, the two organizations became conflated in the public mind. So now, the all-seeing eye on the dollar, placed there in 1935 by non-Mason Secretary of Agriculture Henry Wallace, is seen as proof of Masonic and Illuminati control, despite the fact that the two groups are not the same, despite the fact that the Illuminati doesn't exist, despite all evidence. But facts don't stop symbols from taking on lives of their own. Let's go deeper into the lodge. Walk into any Masonic lodge and you'll see the floor, a checkerboard pattern of black and white squares. The mosaic pavement, as it's called, representing duality, good and evil, light and darkness, the opposing forces that define human existence. Masons walk across this floor during rituals, symbolizing their journey through a world of moral choices, where every step takes you toward light or shadow. But critics see something else, hidden codes. They claim the pattern is a key, that certain squares hold significance, that walking the floor in specific patterns unlocks secrets. Some even claim it's a game board, and the world is the game. Is it profound philosophy or paranoid pattern seeking? Perhaps both. Jachin and Boaz, the twin pillars that stood at the entrance to Solomon's temple, according to biblical text. In Masonic lodges, they're recreated, often in the form of two columns flanking the worshipful master's chair. They represent balance, strength and establishment, masculine and feminine, the dual nature of reality. But they also represent something else, the gateway. To pass between them is to enter sacred space, to leave the ordinary world behind and step into the realm of mysteries. And in pop culture, these pillars have taken on new life. The twin towers, the duality of choice, the left-hand path and the right-hand path. Every time you see two pillars flanking an entrance in film, in architecture, in art, you're seeing an echo of this ancient symbol. But symbols are only half the story. Because what truly binds Freemasons together isn't what they see, it's what they do. The Masonic handshakes. There are several, each corresponding to different degrees of initiation. To an outsider, they look like normal greetings. But subtle differences, the position of the thumb, the pressure on specific fingers, the number of grips, communicate rank and recognition. This is how Masons identify each other in public. A businessman in New York can recognize a Mason in Tokyo without saying a word. But the handshakes are just the beginning. There are words and specific phrases that must be given in response to questions. Passwords that change with each degree. There are signs, gestures made during meetings that convey meaning without speech. And there are penalties. In the traditional initiation oaths, candidates swore that if they revealed Masonic secrets, they would accept gruesome punishments. Having their throat cut across, their tongue torn out, their body buried in the sand, their chest opened and heart thrown to the beasts. Were these real threats? No, they were symbolic. Metaphors for the spiritual death that comes from betraying sacred trust. But to outsiders hearing these oaths, they sounded like something much darker. And in an organization built on secrecy, people always assume the worst. Which brings us to the question that has haunted Freemasonry for 3 centuries. What are they actually hiding? Is it ancient wisdom? Political plots? Something else entirely? To answer that, we need to explore the conspiracies. If you believe the internet, the Freemasons control everything. They orchestrate wars. They manipulate economies. They place their members in positions of power and pull the strings of nations like puppet masters. The New World Order, a supposed plan to establish a single global government, erasing national sovereignty and individual freedom. And at the top of this pyramid, the Freemasons. The evidence presented? Vague statements by politicians about New World Order, the symbols on currency, the fact that powerful people have been Masons. But here's the problem. Freemasonry isn't a monolithic organization. There are hundreds of Grand Lodges worldwide, each operating independently. They don't agree on rituals, on membership requirements, on political positions. The Grand Lodge of England doesn't control the Grand Lodge of Texas. The Scottish Rite doesn't have authority over the York Rite. French Masons often don't recognize American Masons and vice versa. The idea that these fractured, often quarreling groups could coordinate a global conspiracy is implausible. It's like saying all Christians control the world because there are Christian politicians. The category is too broad. The organization too decentralized. But that doesn't stop the theories. Conspiracy theorists will tell you to look at Washington, D.C. from above to study the street layout. There, connecting the Capitol, the White House, and the Washington Monument is supposedly a pentagram, a satanic symbol, proof that America was founded by devil-worshipping Masons. Except it's not true. Yes, Pierre Charles L'Enfant designed D.C.'s street layout. Yes, he used symbolic geometry. But the pentagram theory requires cherry-picking certain streets while ignoring others. Draw enough lines on any city map, and you'll find shapes. And as for Satanism, Freemasonry explicitly requires belief in a supreme being. Atheists aren't allowed to join. Devil worship contradicts their fundamental principles. But the conspiracy persists because it's more exciting than the truth. L'Enfant designed a city with wide avenues, impressive sightlines, and neoclassical aesthetics because that's what was fashionable in 18th century urban planning. But city designed according to contemporary architectural trends doesn't sell books or get clicks. Another popular theory: Freemasons control the media, deciding what information reaches the public. The evidence? Some media executives and journalists have been Masons. Therefore, the conspiracy concludes all media is controlled by the lodge. This theory falls apart under the slightest scrutiny. First, membership. In the U.S. today, there are about 1 million Freemasons. In the mid-20th century, there were over 4 million. In a population of hundreds of millions, finding Masons in any profession isn't remarkable, it's statistics. Second, if Masons controlled the media, they're doing a terrible job. Because the media is full of exposes about Freemasons, documentaries questioning their motives, articles about their declining membership. If a conspiracy really controlled everything, they wouldn't let people say they control everything. But perhaps the most pervasive conspiracy theory is also the oldest. For centuries, Freemasons have been accused of ritual killings, of sacrifices conducted in secret ceremonies, of covering up crimes committed by brother Masons. The most famous case, the Morgan Affair of 1826. William Morgan, a former Mason, announced he would publish a book exposing Masonic secrets. Shortly after, he disappeared. His body was never found. Rumors spread that Masons had murdered him to protect their secrets. The scandal was enormous. It triggered the Anti-Masonic Party, America's first third political party. Lodges closed. Membership plummeted. But was Morgan murdered? Possibly. Was it a Masonic conspiracy? Unlikely. Several Masons were arrested and tried for kidnapping. Some were convicted. But evidence of organized, lodge-sanctioned murder? Never found. More likely, a few hot-headed members acted independently and stupidly, giving conspiracy theorists ammunition for 200 years. Since then, every unsolved crime involving a Mason, as victim or suspect, gets pulled into conspiracy theories. Some claim that Jack the Ripper was a Freemason, or killed by Freemasons. Evidence? Virtually none. The JFK assassination? Theories abound that Masons were involved. Evidence? Connecting random Masonic members to random aspects of the case proves nothing. The pattern is clear. When you have millions of members across centuries, some will be involved in crimes. That's not conspiracy. That's mathematics. But there is one conspiracy theory worth examining more closely. Because unlike the other theories, this one has some truth to it. Freemasons did infiltrate, or they participated in governments, extensively, at various points in history. So many legislators, judges, and officials were Masons that they could influence policy. In Italy, in the 1980s, the P2 Lodge scandal revealed that a secret Masonic lodge had infiltrated the highest levels of government, military, and media, engaging in actual conspiracy propaganda, false flag operations, political manipulation. This was real. This happened. And it confirmed every fear about Masonic power. But here's what's critical. P2 was condemned by mainstream Freemasonry. The Grand Orient of Italy revoked its charter. Legitimate Masons disavowed it. Because P2 wasn't following Masonic principles. It was using Masonic structure for criminal ends. This is the real danger with secret societies. Not that they're all conspiracies, but that the structure can be hijacked by actual conspirators. So what's the verdict? Do Freemasons control the world? No. But have Freemasons influenced the world? Absolutely. Influence and control are different things. When Freemasons shaped the American Revolution, they weren't following lodge orders. They were individuals inspired by Masonic ideals, acting on their own convictions. When Masonic businessmen networked and helped each other, that was mutual aid, not global conspiracy. When Masonic symbols appeared in architecture and currency, that was cultural influence, not occult control. The difference matters. Because conflating influence with conspiracy makes it impossible to have honest conversations about how power actually works. Real power isn't about secret handshakes in dark rooms. It's about networks, wealth, education, access, things that often correlate with Masonic membership, not because the lodge grants them, but because the lodge attracts people who already have them. Rich and powerful men join Freemasonry. Freemasonry doesn't make men rich and powerful. Cause and effect matter. So if they're not running the world, If the conspiracies are mostly false, if their secrets are largely symbolic, what are the Freemasons today? This is Freemasonry in the 21st century. No robes, no mystery, just regular men gathering for a meeting. The average age of a Freemason? Over 60. Lodges are closing. Membership is graying. The Brotherhood that once attracted the world's most influential men now struggles to recruit. What happened? The world changed. The 20th century saw the rise of service organizations, Rotary Club, Lions Club, Kiwanis, that offered community and networking without the secrecy and elaborate rituals. Then came the internet. Suddenly, secret knowledge wasn't so secret. You can find Masonic rituals online, read their texts, watch their ceremonies on YouTube. The mystique evaporated. Social patterns shifted. Men today don't join fraternal organizations the way they did in the 1950s. There's less time, less interest, less perceived value. The decline of civic engagement affected everyone, but hit secret societies especially hard. The conspiracy theories backfired. For decades, Masons enjoyed the aura of mystery. But today, in an age of online paranoia, anything secret looks suspicious, not intriguing. Young men researching Freemasonry online find equal parts history and hysteria, and many decide it's not worth the hassle. But the organization isn't dead. It's evolving. In major cities, younger lodges are forming. Men in their 20s and 30s, attracted by the history, the philosophy, the ritual. They're not interested in secrecy for secrecy's sake. They're interested in meaning, in tradition, in belonging to something larger than themselves in an increasingly atomized world. For them, Freemasonry offers what modern culture lacks: initiation, rites of passage, structured personal development. And increasingly, the question arises, should women be allowed to join? Traditional Freemasonry is male only. This has been a core principle since its founding. But female Masonic organizations exist. The Order of the Eastern Star, Co-Masonry, and women's Grand Lodges that perform the same rituals. Are they real Masons? Mainstream male lodges say no. The women themselves say absolutely. This debate is fracturing the organization. Some lodges are liberalizing. Others are doubling down on tradition. And in France, the Grand Orient has gone even further, allowing atheists to join, removing the requirement to believe in a supreme being. British and American lodges don't recognize them as legitimate Masons. The French don't care. Freemasonry, it turns out, is as divided as the world it exists in. So what do Freemasons actually do today? Charity. Lots of charity. The Shriners, a Masonic appendant body, operate a network of children's hospitals providing free care. Masonic lodges fund scholarships, disaster relief, community programs. In 2024, Masons donated over $18 million to charitable causes. But they don't advertise it. The principle of doing good without seeking recognition remains. They also preserve history. Masonic libraries contain some of the world's most extensive collections of esoteric and philosophical texts. And they maintain buildings, some architectural masterpieces that might otherwise be lost. But the question remains, is this enough? Can an organization built on secrecy survive in an age of transparency? Can rituals designed for 18th century men resonate with 21st century seekers? And most critically, does Freemasonry still matter? The answer depends on who you ask. To critics, Freemasonry is a relic, a boys' club for old men clinging to irrelevant secrets. To conspiracy theorists, it's still the puppet master, just better hidden. To members, it's a fraternity offering friendship, moral development, and connection to tradition. To historians, it's a vivid tale of ideas that refuse to die, symbols that gather power like storms, and organizations struggling to survive the pull of history. But there's one place where their influence cannot be denied: everywhere you look, whether you really notice it or not. Walk through any major city, and you're walking through Masonic history. That courthouse? Cornerstone laid by Masons. That library? Funded by Masons. That monument? Designed by Masons. The symbols are everywhere, once you know what to look for. The all-seeing eye watching from pediments. The twin pillars flanking entrances. These aren't secret codes. They're signatures. Evidence that Freemasons were here, building civilization, one stone at a time. And their influence extends beyond architecture. The ideas that Freemasons championed reason over superstition, equality over hierarchy, brotherhood across divisions, and these became the foundations of modern democracy. Not because Masons conspired to make it so, but because Masons participated in making it that way. They were part of the Enlightenment, part of revolutions, part of the long, messy process of human progress. Were they perfect? No. Did they make mistakes? Constantly. Did some abuse their power? Absolutely. But the core ideals, self-improvement, charity, brotherhood, seeking truth, these aren't sinister. They're fundamentally human aspirations. So what's the final verdict on Freemasonry? They're not running the world. They probably never were. But they helped shape it, for better and worse. Their secrets? Mostly symbolic. Passwords and handshakes designed to create bonds between men in an age before social media. Their rituals? Theater with purpose. Ceremonies designed to mark transitions, teach lessons, create meaning in a world that often feels meaningless. Their influence today? Fading, but not gone. Freemasonry faces an existential question. Can a secret society survive when there are no secrets left? Can rituals designed for candlelit temples resonate in the age of smartphones? Can an organization that once attracted kings and revolutionaries find relevance among modern seekers? Time will tell. But whether Freemasonry survives another 300 years or fades into history, its legacy is permanent. Because the symbols they created are now part of our collective unconscious. The eye watching from the dollar bill. The square and compass representing morality and restraint. The pillars framing transitions. These images have escaped their original context and taken on lives of their own, which brings us back to where we started. In a building with no windows, men gather in darkness. They speak in code. They swear oaths. They wear symbols older than empires. But now you know what those symbols mean. You know their history, both the facts and the myths. You know their influence, both real and imagined. And you know their secret, that there is no grand secret, no ancient wisdom hidden from the masses, no conspiracy controlling world events, no mystical knowledge that will change everything. Just men seeking to improve themselves, building community, creating meaning through ritual, preserving tradition. Is that profound or disappointingly ordinary? Perhaps it's both. Because the real mystery of Freemasonry isn't what they're hiding. It's why we're so desperate to believe they're hiding something. What does it say about us that we need secret societies to exist? That we want puppet masters pulling strings? That we need conspiracy theories? Maybe we create secret societies in our minds because the alternative, that history is random, that power is diffuse, that no one is in control, is too terrifying to accept. Freemasonry became a screen onto which we project our fears and fantasies about power. Are the Freemasons a misunderstood brotherhood, preserving ancient wisdom and moral philosophy? Or are they a hidden force, shaping the world from the shadows, guarding secrets they'll never reveal? That's for you to decide. Take care. Maybe someone's not always watching.